Hello, Garland Nixon here, man. I would not want to be the leader of any European country right now, but they brought it on themselves. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and a rainy night in Maryland on the beautiful shores of the Chesapeake Bay. How happy could I possibly be? Um, Happier than the leaders of the European countries. So let's chat about that. Oh, wait a minute. I can't see my comments. Don't like not seeing my comments. All right. Interesting. I think let me get rid of this. I think the um Nord Stream 2 attack has really changed things, shall we say, for the European leaders. Because let's face it, as much as they pretend to be stupid, they're not really. They're compliant. They understand the game that they're playing, but they're not stupid. Let's look at. I want to show you something that I think is interesting. I think it's um, enlightening, shall we say? And I haven't seen anyone bring this up. So every now and then, you get, and I don't see it. Every now and then you get something really good. So let's do this since I don't see it here. There's an article about a book that it's not an article, but there's a book that Tony Blinken wrote that I have yet to see anyone discuss. And so, being, as you know, as you can see behind me, book, Garland's a guy who loves to read. And over the course of my life, I've read a lot of books and I've looked through a lot of books. And, I got a lot of books and I've given away boxes and boxes and boxes of books. So, because I've enjoyed, I don't read like I used to, but for most of my life, man, I was a fruitcake when it came to reading. So, at any rate, I've stumbled over so many books over the course of looking for books and finding new books and things of that nature that something came to mind today. Most people don't know that Tony Blinken wrote a book, at least one. So let's look at this book and see if I can ever find how the hell do I. You know what I don't see? I don't see where I share. How about present? Maybe it's present now. Slides, present screen. Oh, they've changed it. Oh, for God's sake, they've changed it. Okay. Oh, I can do all kinds of things now, not just share screen. Wow, this is awesome. Okay, so let's look at this. Look at me like a little kid, all excited on StreamYard. And you guys are like, would you just get to the point, Garland? For God's sake, man, you're driving us nuts. Okay, so here is a book by Tony Blinken, telling as it may be. Tony wrote this back in, I believe it was 1987. As God knows, as bad as I hate to give Tony Blinken any money, I had to buy the book. I couldn't help myself. I got to look through it. I got to leaf through it. I got to read it. Why? Why, you might ask, is this book so important? Look at the name of this book: Ally versus Ally, America, Europe, and the Siberian Pipeline Crisis. Let us look at what might this book be about. Examines, let me show you right here, my dear and fluffy friends, examines U.S. relations with member nations of NATO. Listen to this very carefully. Explains U.S. opposition to the Siberian Pipeline project and assesses European willingness to ignore U.S. objections. Tony Blinken, the man who is clearly a sociopath. I mean, this guy, look at this guy's eyes. Talk about dead shark eyes. Just before that dead shark eye thing that when they talk about sociopaths, they have eyes that look like a shark just before they bite you, and the eyes roll up in their head, crunch. You saw Jaws, right? Okay, that's Tony Blinken's look. And most of the people that work for Biden got the same look. Okay, so think about this. So first of all, examines U.S. relations with member nations of NATO. That's exactly where we are right now, isn't it? Explains U.S. opposition to the Siberian pipeline project, Nord Stream 2. And last but not least, assesses European willingness to ignore U.S. objections. Way back in the 80s, way back in the 80s, Tony Blinken was thinking and talking and writing books about pipelines to Russia. And what about those darn NATO members who are ignoring US objections? What do you think about that, dear friends? That was on Tony Blinken's mind a long time ago. And I can't wait till I get the book. I ordered it, but it's not going to be here till the end of the month. So when I do, I gotta read that book, read most of it. I wish I could have got it really in Audible so I could have listened to it. But I'm sure, I mean, who the hell is going to buy Tony Blinken's book other than some nerd like me, right? So I mean, it's just Tony Blinken. I mean, what it's like buying Jeffrey Dahmer's book. Hey, a great cookbook by Jeffrey Dahmer. Let me take a look. I think we know how that's going to be, right? To serve man is what it's going to be. That's that's going to be Jeffrey Dahmer's book, To Serve Man, and of course Tony Blinken's book is going to be To Blow the Hell Out of Your Allies. There's a couple other things too. The name of the book, Ally versus Ally, which tells you what else? That Tony Blinken sees his ally. Now, to me, ally implies that it's a friend, implies that you're on the same side, you're working together, you're allies. But Tony Blinken says ally versus ally, which tells you this guy sees his ally, sometime you're my ally, and sometime we're opposed. But by the very nature of grammar, if nothing else. You forget what we're actually talking about in the real world. Grammatically speaking, ally versus ally means they ain't your ally. That means maybe on some things you're allies, but you don't see them as a full ally. You see them as you're an ally when you do what I want, and when you don't, you're on the other side. And what do I have to do? What do you think Tony Blinken wants to do with the Siberian pipeline crisis? What do you think, huh? So that's interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't the US blow up the Siberian pipeline or blow up some pipelines back then between Russia and the EU or something like that? They did some terrorist acts. So anyway, I can't wait to get the book, right? Because I suspect when I read the book, Tony Blinken's fingerprints are going to be all over, as if they are. Come on, let's not be stupid here. We're pretending, right? But they're going to be all over the Nord Stream 2 explosion. And I'm starting to get this out to people. I shared it with friends. I've shared it online. I want people to start saying, I want it to get out. I want people to start looking at it. As far as I'm concerned, it's information. The more information we have, the better. Now, it is possible. I'm a realist. It is possible that people may look through that book. I may look from one end to the other, and I may open it. And Tony Blinken may say, whatever you do, don't anger your ally. Don't touch the pipelines. Never, ever, ever do that. And it may be something that, leads me to conclude that maybe Tony wasn't involved, which I doubt is going to happen. But I'm just saying, I like to leave open any possibilities from a guilty bastard like Tony, when it comes to a guilty bastard like Tony Blinken that we all know did it. Let's be honest. Okay, so but I wanted that to share with you. Ally versus ally, America, Europe, and the Siberian pipeline crisis. Examines U.S. relations with member nations of NATO, explains U.S. opposition to the Siberian pipeline project, and assesses European willingness to ignore U.S. objections. All right, let's move forward. Let us talk about what we're looking at here. Somebody says, when you're done with little Blinky's book, I'll buy it from you for $2. Or we could use it to line a bird cage. If we run out of toilet paper, it'll probably be valuable for that. So we'll find something to do with it. I got a fireplace. I could start my fireplace with it, whatever. But at any rate, so let's move forward. What we're looking at now is, here's what's interesting. When and at the same time that the Russians have done everything with the new regions, and they're incorporating them into Russia, and people are saying like, okay, the whole game's going to change now. The game has changed, everything's changed because the Russians are going to do this, and then they're going to say it's part of Russia, blah blah blah. So the implication is things are going to change. There's going to be a dramatic change. The Russians are going to do things very, very differently. They're going to be more aggressive. And how are the Americans going to deal with this change? Everybody knows. Let's not pretend that the UK or Germany's in charge. I think it's clear now that they're not. Okay. I think it is clear now that they are in an abusive relationship. But the question is, what are the Russians going to do? Are they going to, bomb the bloody hell? Are they going to out of Ukraine? Are they going to, shut off all electricity, water, and everything from one end of Ukraine to the other and make their lives a living hell? I don't know. They may. That's war. If it happens, I don't want to see anybody suffer ever. But I'd like to see a negotiated end to this war, but the U.S. empire ain't doing that for now. And so we are where we are. But here's my point. So the discussion was, how are things going to change when the Russians make a move, right? But here's what's interesting. I think you also have to have a discussion now about how things change after the U.S. attack on the pipelines. I think that has to be a discussion too, because clearly the United States has taken things in a different direction, not in a different direction. Let me put it a different way. They have put an exclamation mark on their rule over the EU. For a long time here, they've pretended, at least on the outside, they've pretended like the EU countries, the EU nations had some level of autonomy, could make some decisions on their own, would be allowed. And bottom line, that if one of those, that they're part of the US empire, but if one of those countries said no, that they had the autonomy to say no, that no meant no, that yet, as William Burns once said in the famous cable, niet means niet, right? And I think there was some belief by people that these countries, these colonies in the Middle East, where we're very wrong to call them countries anymore. I'm excuse the Middle East, in Europe, had some level of autonomy. What the attack on Germany's infrastructure did was it just made it clear. Under other administrations, maybe, yeah. See, I'm not just going to say no. I'm going to say may depend upon the administration. It may be that how much. It's like this. If you have a dog on a leash, here's the question: how long do you want the leash to be? You've got one person who says, I want the leash to be very, very close, and I want to keep the dog near me. And I want one of those choker things where if you pull on it, it chokes him. Or if you pull on him, they have the little point. So if you pull on it, it tightens up real hard and it hurts the dog and he'll stop trying to get away because I know somebody that has a dog that's a very big and powerful dog. And if that dog jumps at another dog and he clamps down on the other dog's going to be mangled. So and it's reasonable. He has this collar, and the collar is fine. But if he pulls it really, really hard, it has little metal on the inside, which never bothers the dog. But if he pulls it really hard, it'll kind of poke him a little bit and make the dog jump, right? Which his dog is so big and powerful, when he's walking him around and there's other dogs, he's got to be able to do that because you almost couldn't control this damn thing. It's a monster. You know what I mean? It's a cane corso, C-A-N-E, cane corso, a big old cane corso. And he and I will walk the dog. And man, it's like you're walking a friggin' dinosaur. Dino the dinosaur here, for God's sake. It's huge, right? So I say all that to say this. What kind of collar do you have? How long is it? And that's what the game the U.S. empire has been playing with Europe, depending upon the administration, is depending on how long a leash that the Europeans get, and whether or not it's a choker leash, whether it has some like electronic button that you could, electrocute the dog, whatever the case may be, right? How much leash it has, and what pain is instituted should you pull too hard, right? Now, the neocons are in total ascendancy right now. The neocons are completely in charge of the Biden administration, right? So the neocons are like this. We don't have a leash. We got a whip. We don't have a leash. We got a cat of nine tails. And if you so much as breathe, you get nothing. If you so much as wiggle a finger that we don't want, we're going to take that cat of nine tails and beat the hell out of you and throw you on the ground and stomp you mercilessly. They have no... they don't give any room for autonomy. You will do what you are told to do. These people are extremely, look what they do, or you will be punished. These people are extremely mean and angry and vicious. So, what has happened? Where are we? Basically, they made it clear. Remember Joe Biden saying to them, look, guys, and he wasn't just talking to Schultz, he was talking to all of the EU because everybody was watching. Everybody's watching. When let's just say we all get nabbed and we're all thrown in Guantanamo Bay, and a new guy comes in, and the head guard comes in, and we're all lined up. We're in the field, and he's like, "Okay, you," and he starts talking to the guy. We're all listening. We want to hear what he says to the new guy because we want to get an understanding of what the situation is. If he says to the new guy, "If you so much as breathe, I'll shoot you in the head," we get it. If he says, "If you so much as breathe, I'll cut your rations down," then we understand, okay, if you do something wrong, then you may get your food cut. We're all listening because we're all part of the same team here, and we understand that in theory, whatever mechanism of control that this guard uses to control this particular prisoner, that's his way of doing things. This is a new guard, and likely we got to understand, if we do steal an extra biscuit, what's going to happen? Are we going to get a bullet in the head or just a foot in the behind? If it's a foot in the behind, what the hell, steal an extra biscuit, because at least we'll get a foot in the behind with an extra biscuit. Fair trade-off, right? Those are the kinds of things that people think. They're always looking for the boundaries. They're looking for the fences. If you got kids, if you've got dogs, how far can I go? And they're going to go as far as you let them, right? The Biden administration have made it clear now. Now, keep in mind, the UK feels that they're the right hand of the Biden administration. The UK feels like we are not going to get beaten up or whatever because we are so close to the courtiers, right? Back during the feudal days, you'd have a court, and you'd have a bunch of people that tried to hang around the king's court. They tried to get close to the king. They tried to befriend the king. They tried to be needed by the king. The king really needs me. The king really trusts me. The king really loves me. So the king's not going to cut their head off. They'll get extra privileges. And if somebody else screws with them, they'll get their heads cut off. Now, it's dangerous to be near the king, because if the king comes in a bad mood, he might just say off with everybody's head because he's in a bad mood. But the courtiers were trying to benefit. They were trying to get the benefits of the king. They were trying, if the king's in a good mood, hey, I think I'll give you another 1,000 acres of land, and that comes with 250 peasants. Yay, thanks, king. Right? So there was a trade-off to be close to the king, but it usually worked out in your best interest. So the UK, in this courtier situation, the UK feels they're at the right hand of the king, and they're going to do the king's bidding, and they're going to get it whatever the hell they want. They have, I talked to somebody recently who just came back, who former CIA. In fact, I tell you what, I'll tell you who it is. He's a good friend of mine. His name's John Kiriakou. And if you want to find out about it, go right to Consortium News. In fact, let me show you. In fact, I think, you know what? I really think I need to share this with you during this because this makes my point so well. This really makes my point. Let's look at this. Yeah. I'm sharing this with you because John, I just talked to John about this today, and he made some points because he just got back from England and Israel. Let's take a look at it. So he talks about, let's get to the part, a couple of things. Let me see if I can find it. Basically, what he said was he talked to some people in England. I hope it's in the article. Is it? He also talked about Assange. Crap. Okay, I'll have to tell you what he told me. He didn't put it all in here. So that's even better. So you get some inside info. In a nutshell, John told me, he knows people, that he was talking to people, and basically what they said to him, and he said he found it very, very troubling. But what they said to him was basically, in a nutshell, that England has no independence whatsoever. None, zero. And it's not like it's a secret that the people there, basically, they're good with it. That's the agreement, etc. When you talk to powerful people, that they're like, nah, we don't, we do what we're told. That's all. Let me see. Here he has. John says, I had occasion to visit London and Jerusalem to meet with, listen to this, members of the establishment media and two respective parliaments and people from think tanks and universities. John doesn't go talk to some schlep on the street. He's talking to real people. He knows real people. And he was going there to talk about this Nigerian guy who was tortured and mistreated and all that. And they're trying to get him out. But the bottom line is, and he says he talked with two members of the House of Lords who focus on human rights issues, right? Because the guy was a British citizen. And in a nutshell, here's the thing. Now, this is going to be interesting. John said he traveled to there and he said, look, this guy's in real trouble and he's in Africa and he didn't do anything wrong and he's been nabbed by the Nigerian government and they want to put him to death and he is a British citizen. Can you do anything? And they basically said, nah, yeah, he's a British citizen, but he's black. And so he's not really a British citizen to us. Think about that. That's the reality. And John's not talking to schleps. He's talking to real powerful people who are straightforward. Yeah, nah, he's black. Nothing we can do. He's not really British to us, right? And they admitted to him that they have no authority whatsoever, as if you and I didn't already know that, right? And John said it was, very disheartening to him to hear those kinds of things, right? Okay, so I say all that to say this. I interviewed him. I should, I really need to put that interview up because it was a friggin' unbelievable. You would shake your head when you listen to what John found out in Israel and in the UK in his recent trip, and just shake your head. But read it. It's in Consortium News, and it's called A Depressing Journey. The author came away from a trip to Britain and Israel last month, deeply concerned about human rights, Julian Assange, and the Palestinian people. Very good. Get that. Read that article as soon as possible. Okay, so where are we now? So the leaders of Europe, I use that. I use that word guardedly. The leaders of Europe have traditionally felt that they had some say in a lot of things, but that they, and they had to answer their electorate. They had to kind of keep things calm at home. And realistically, here's what I think their job was. Their job was not what their constituents thought. Their constituents thought, I'm going to elect you, you're going to win, and you're going to represent me, and you're going to mind this particular country. What the leader of a European country's job is, all of the people who are parts of the empire, right, who are willing colonies, their job is a couple of things. Number one, to maintain the illusion of democracy. You have to keep the people believing that they're in a democracy, even though there aren't. Because if they ever figure out they're not in a democracy, they're going to demand one. And if they figure out they're not a democracy and you are ostensibly the leader of the country, they're going to know that you ain't in charge and they're not going to respect you and they're not going to listen to you. And they're going to do what the Russians did last December. Last December, what did the Russians do? The Russians said, we have a list of security demands. And they were like, and we're going to give them to, and NATO was like, and they were like, no, we're not giving them to the friggin' British, the Germans, NATO, screw all of that. That's all a joke. We're giving it to the United States because they're in charge of this. And those are the only people we'll talk with, because they were being real. They knew. And the fact of the matter is, the European leaders didn't say much because they knew too. The only thing they were worried about was that the people that they were shepherding over, shall we say, for the empire would figure it out. So what we got now is the cat is coming out of the bag, right? Now the reality, the illusion is starting to drift away. So now they're dealing with people who are saying, wait a minute, we got a problem. We went along with you. You told us to go along with you on this whole Ukraine thing, and we believed you, and you told us to believe you, and we believed you. But deep down inside, we still expect you. We don't even know how, but we expect you to look out for our well-being, right? And in that, and this is important, buried within that expectation, right, was this. Buried deep within that expectation was this unspoken reality. At the time that the leaders were saying, the European leaders were saying to the people, go along with us on this Ukraine thing and these Russian sanctions, the European people took it for granted that you're asking us to go along with you, you're asking about these Russian sanctions, but we trust that you're not going to do anything to wipe us out or destroy us or hurt us, but so bad. We trust that even though you're asking us to do something, we trust that you're not going to walk us out into the middle of a minefield. We trust that you care for us, that you're thinking about us. And we trust that you care for us enough that when it comes to making decisions, you're going to make decisions that takes our standard of living, our traditions, our lifestyle, everything we're used to into account. So when you say to us, so the people of Europe believed that when their leaders said to them, follow us on the journey, implicit in that comment was, and while we're going on a journey, don't worry, we'll be looking out for you. That was implicit. They believed that. Why did they believe that? Because they were under the illusion that they were in a democracy. And in a democracy, that would be the case because they could hold the leaders democratically accountable. So in a democracy, if you believe you're in a democracy, then by its very nature, the system you're in requires that the leaders are cognizant of the needs of the people because the people can act to get rid of them, to change, blah, blah, blah. Now, keep in mind something. Recently, what have we seen? We've seen when Jeremy Corbyn ran, the machine took him out. Mike Pompeo said, if we think Corbyn's going to win, we won't wait around for that. So the U.S. empire even said, look, they gave them some hints. They're like, look, you think you got democracy, but you don't, because if we think Corbyn's going to win, we're stopping that. That ain't, no, there's no democracy here. But you know what? For some reason, the people in Europe didn't hear that. That was screamed at them. Hey, you don't have democracy. That's what Pompeo said. But the people didn't quite hear it. It was too much for them to hear. They just like, yeah, sure. Well, Corbyn probably wasn't going to win anyway. They just said something to themselves so they wouldn't believe it. You know, the girl that finds out that her boyfriend's fooling around, and somebody says, "Hey, I saw him in the car with this pretty girl, and they were smooching," and he says, she asked him, and he says, that was my cousin, and I just gave her a hug. I hadn't seen her in a long time. She knows it's not true, but she wants to believe it. So she believes it because she wants to believe it, because it would be devastating to accept that reality, right? So as the US administrations were doing things to clearly communicate to the people of Europe that you have no autonomy and no democracy, they didn't really want to believe it. It would be painful to believe it. It would be troublesome and problematic for them to believe it. Besides, things have been working so well. So to some extent, I think there were some in Europe who had a clue that they didn't have any autonomy. But since things were working well enough, they were willing to accept being under the claws of the beast. They were like, well, even if we don't have autonomy and we are colonies of the empire, this empire stuff's working out for us. They're going around the world, they're stealing coffee and bananas, diamonds, gold, all the things, lithium to make our batteries for our cell phones. To some extent, the people in Europe were willing to kind of turn their head a little bit about the horrible things that their government were doing to these people way out there. They're different from us, and they're probably not as smart as us anyway. So they're poor. It's their own fault they're poor. It's not that we're robbing the living shit out of them. It's that, if they had the moral and ethical strength that we have, they'd be like us. It's not that the empire's going there robbing them, and has been for centuries. That couldn't be it. So they just keep their mouth shut. I don't see that, and I'm living pretty good, and that's okay. I got a good standard of living. Now, that's been going down lately, but it's still better than those people over there. I mean, of course it is. Look at them. They're all trying to come in. And then, of course, the people in Europe are like, don't let them in. And then, even then, when the people of Europe, and I'm being straightforward here, when the people of Europe woke up and they saw there's Muslim people and there's Africans and they're knocking on our door, and they're like, you know, it's warm in here and we got plenty of food. We only got room for but so much. And those people, we don't have room for them. So hey, best of luck, guys, but you got to go back to the Middle East. You got to go back to Africa. We don't really have room for you. But what they didn't really want to come to grips with is this. Why the hell are those people at our door? They wanted our door 25 years ago. Why now? Because our governments bombed the shit out of their country, right? I don't want to deal with that. We didn't want to say, well, wait a minute. This whole crisis started off with Syrian refugees. And how did that happen? The US and NATO and the UK started this dirty war and this regime change war on Syria and bombing and destroying Syria. And all these Syrians showed up on Europe's doorstep. Now, Europeans didn't want to deal with that, right? They didn't want to come. They just said, we don't want all these Syrians. They didn't want to deal with the fact that their leaders was dragging their asses in there with the United States. It's coming back to haunt them now, though. They should have dealt with it. They should have stood up and they should have went to the streets and said, look, we're sick and tired of you guys destabilizing other parts of the world. And then these damn people show up on our doorsteps and they want a job. And our leaders are creating it. You don't care because you got free labor. Now we've got all kind of disruption in our lives. They don't really want to be here. It's just you blew the hell out of their country. They were fine before, whatever they were doing, but now they're struggling. And now they all show up on our front doorstep. The people in Europe want to get pissed at them, but they didn't want to ask their leaders how this happened. It's the same thing here. It's the same thing here. Go to the southern border and you hear all these people, oh my God, we got a disaster on the southern border. Why the hell did we overthrow the government of Guatemala in 2009? Why the hell? I mean, need I go on? Need I even start to go on about the South America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Haiti? The ungodly actions that the United States has taken to destabilize those whole regions, same damn thing. And then they show up on our front door. And then all we do is we pretend like it just happened yesterday. Hey, what are they here? We don't want them here. Why are they different? And they're doing different. And they want our jobs and blah, blah, blah. And of course, our leaders that destabilized everything are just grinning. Look at that. We got some people who mow our grass and clean our lawns and blah, blah, blah. Right? So now there's some chickens coming home to roost. And that is the Europeans did not, politically speaking, knock the hell out of their leaders when their leaders were destabilizing the Middle East and Africa and overthrowing Libya and all these other things that created this dynamic. When all these people showed up, they didn't question it then. They didn't push back on their leaders and they didn't say, you're at fault, you screwed us. They just got mad at the people who showed up without getting to the foundation of the problem. And that is that NATO, which is nothing but an umbrella organization for the United States to bring in all of the European countries and take power of attorney for their foreign policy, NATO was destabilizing all these damn places, and they were causing these people to show up at your front doorsteps. And now, see, it's like there's so many times you got a problem in your life. You got a bump on your arm. Hey, that's a funny looking little bump. Looks kind of weird. It'll be all right. You let it go on and on and on, and then another bump. And before you know it, you go to the doctor and you got like massive skin cancer all the time. You should have you should have dealt with that bump the first time, but you waited. I had a bump on my arm. I'm like, oh my God, skin cancer. As much time as I spent out on a boat. Went there, the doctor looked at it. He's like, nah, it's a mole. You're good, but keep an eye out. Okay, great. You got to deal with it early, right? They didn't deal with it. They didn't deal with the fact that their leaders were betraying them and that they had problems, which is all of these people showing up. They got mad at the people, but they never dealt with. They got mad. It's like a spigot is open and you get mad at the water coming out, not the person that opened the spigot. They shouldn't have opened the spigot. These people opened the spigot in all these other parts of the world, and now they come. Do you think it's an accident? Think about this. It's the exact same thing in the United States as it is in Europe. You think about this. In the United States, what's going on? All these people screaming about the border and not all these people showing up at the border. And why are they showing up at the border? Because we've destabilized the entire Latin Americas and in the Caribbean, and we're still doing it. Think about this. Juan Guaido is still the president of Venezuela, isn't he? No, the Daniel Ortega is a vicious, brutal dictator. The Cubans are doing. We're still doing the same bullshit that got us a border full of people. NAFTA under Clinton. What did it do? NAFTA got what I think 2 million peasant farmers in in Mexico lost their farm and they showed up at the border. And then, so then what are all these Americans? Well, I'm going to the border with a gun and we're going to stop these people. Why didn't you stop Bill Clinton? Why don't we say to Bill Clinton, what the hell did you do? Nope. We got nothing to say. It's all about the people showing up there. It's all about the water without getting mad at the people that turn on the spigot. And you know what? If you don't, sooner or later, they're going to keep doing stupid shit and you're going to pay a price. And that's what's happened. The European people did not address this. They did not go at their leaders and say, this is bullshit. We got people at our borders, but we know why, and we're going to hold you accountable. And we're only going to vote for somebody who says that they're not going to do this or whatever. And they would have, and even then, what they would have found out is they can't vote their way out of it. But at that point, they'd have been way further than they are now, because look, these, this has been going on for what, 10, 12 years? And now 10 or 12 years went by and they didn't deal with it. And now look what they got, a complete disastrous mess, because they didn't go after the people that were doing this, that were destabilizing regions around the world, and they were getting paying a price now. And they didn't find out that they don't have autonomy. So now look where they are. Now they've got a United States, this angry beast. And why is the United States really angry? The United States is angry because the U.S. empire has a economic model that requires, look, it requires, how do I get cheap bananas? Why is it that bananas are 49 cents a pound, but if I want to buy apples from orchards in Westminster, Maryland, that's an hour and 15 minutes away, I got to pay $2 a pound or $2.49 or something a pound? Why is that? But the ones that come from 5,000 miles away are 49 cents a pound. Why? Because we're screwing over the people in the tropics where the bananas are grown. That's why. And we're paying next to nothing for it because they're not getting anything. They're peasants. They're being abused. And what happens? They're broke. They're peasants. They're being abused. There's crime. There's the drug war, as all of these countries feed the drug habits of the United States, and they show up at our damn border. And what do? Do we say to our leaders, hey, man, you guys are screwing up? Nope. We get mad at the people at the border. We get mad at the problem, not the root of the problem, which means you can never fix the problem. And the people who caused the problem are just sitting there laughing because they're going to keep doing it. They're just going to take it further and further. So now what do you have? You have Europe. And you have the people of Europe waking up, looking at their leaders saying, holy mother of God, what do we have? We've got the most incompetent, hapless bunglers, clowns, and knuckleheads than you could ever imagine. The people who are so-called leaders of Europe right now are so incompetent, I don't know if you'd be much better off if they did have autonomy. So what you have now is, you have a situation where you have this angry empire who is pissed because it has as I was about getting to a second ago, there's an economic model that requires me to rob the hell out of everybody else and get all my raw materials cheap. And I can abuse and I can kill, murder, and I can overthrow governments all over Africa and South America and the Middle East and blah, 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 and get everything I need cheap. So that works for me. But that model's starting to dissipate because there's new players in the game. So now you have the rise of other powers. So now Russia rises. So now Russia's going to South America and Russia's going especially to Africa. Hey, we want to do a deal. And the people in Africa are like, well, finally, somebody wants to do a deal with us. Those bastards just overthrow us and kill our leaders. Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, on and on and on, right? So they're like, hey, somebody wants to do a deal. Even if it isn't the best deal, it's better than getting your government overthrown and a bullet in your head. The Chinese come there and they're like, hey, Chinese, what do you want? They're like, got an idea. You want to do a deal? They're like, well, maybe. Well, let's start here. We'll build you some ports and airplanes. Hey, ports and airports and some roads. And we got sneakers that you can buy for like $5. One thing a lot of people don't know. Let me add this. This is important. You talk to people from Africa, example. I know a lot of people go back and forth. And one of the things they say is this, look, you got some of the cheap Chinese stuff like $5 shoes. You can go on some of these websites and you can get the Chinese shoes that are like sneakers. And they're cool looking, like the coolest looking basketball sneakers for 15 or $20, where we got to pay $200 for them, right? They're no name or whatever, right? And all these cheap Chinese clothes and things like that. And we look at them like, that's cheap stuff, whatever, right? But in Africa now, they're like, well, wait a minute. I can't afford $200 shoes. I'm poor, but I can afford a pair of $10 or $15 shoes. right? So now, one of the things these so-called cheap Chinese products that we look at, it's like, oh, Chinese junk, I wouldn't buy it. In some of the poor areas like Africa, that's like, oh, cheap Chinese junk refrigerator. Yeah, but they can afford to buy it now. So it has created an environment where people in Africa who couldn't afford a Bosch or, refrigerator, or one of these, shoes, Nike and blah, blah, they couldn't afford all of that kind of stuff. It was out of their price range. It was in the Western price range. But now China's making a bunch of cheap stuff. And to us, it's like, we don't want it, it's junk. The true fact of the matter is this: a lot of stuff we're buying already is junk. So we buy a pair of $200 sneakers or whatever the hell, and they're not, the only reason they're $200 is because, they got some basketball player's name on them who's making $50 million a year, right? We buy them for $200. They're made in the same factory as the $15 sneakers are made that the guy in Africa is buying. So he's got just as good of shoes as we do. He's just not stupid enough to pay $200 like we are, because we got Michael Jordan's or whoever the hell's name on it. And don't get me wrong, I'm guilty. I got a pair of Jordans in there. I like Jordans. They're cool. It's a cool pair of shoes. You know what I mean? And I mean, hey, I'm an American and we do stupid stuff and we buy things we shouldn't buy just because you got to have it, right? But here's the point. So this is where we get to now. That model ain't working because people in these regions have other options. Russia, China, maybe Iran, even Turkey. Turkey's doing a lot in Africa. Turkey's doing a lot in South America. South America, we used to just overthrow the countries and sanction everybody out. Guess what? Now, China's buying their oil and lithium and things of that nature. They have a new market, and there's 1.4 billion people in that new market. In Russia, it was doing business, and now they can get wheat and oil and gas and trade. What happened with Venezuela? The U.S. sanctioned them, all this stuff, screwed them over. And what happened? The Iranians came and they said, we'll help you get your oil pumping again. You will help you. You don't have any goods. They now have these Iranian grocery stores where they have all kinds of stuff. Iran's made all their stuff and all that. And it's like a Walmart kind of thing, like a lower level for Walmart. But they couldn't even get those products before, right? So there's other options. So the U.S. empire wakes up and it's like, uh-oh, we got problems. We can't run the world, because there's the rise of other great powers, other regional powers such as Iran, and there's other options. And now you got an angry beast. And it's like, all right, we're going to take it all back. Well, that's insane. So the US empire, here's the bottom line, is in a feudal war with modernity. Futile. How about some people may think I meant Feudal. I meant futile. The U.S. empire is in a futile war. The U.S. is not in a war with China. The U.S. is not in a war with Russia. The U.S. is not in a war with Germany. The U.S. is at war. The U.S. empire is at war with modernity. The world is passing them by. The world, the Africans and the people who are the South Americans, etc., are saying, we've been poor because you guys screwed us, and now we got into other opportunities, we're going to take it. And they're like, holy shit, that means we can't just do whatever we want anymore. Now, what does that mean? That means that they're in desperate need of natural resources, doesn't it? Cheap natural resources, energy, gas, all kinds of things, the things that they've been ripping off from the global South. Who's got a lot of that stuff? Russia. So now they need to take Russia, to split it up amongst themselves. Now that they can't rob the global South like they used to for natural resources, they need to take Russia and take all of those natural resources. The economic model that says, I got to get stuff cheap in order to run my economy, and I can only do that by being a gangster and abusing other people, is now they're out of victims. And so now they're like, okay, all right, fine, fair enough. We got to go to Russia. Why? Because they got a lot of natural resources and we can't get it from the global South anymore. Only problem is the Russians ain't going to cooperate, and the Russians have grown up. The Russians are that little brother that you used to push around. I can say that because I don't have any brothers, but half brother, but I didn't grow up with him because he's older than me. So the bottom line is that you used to push around, and you wake up one day and now he's 6'4", and you go to push him and he knocks your ass out because he ain't playing that crap no more and he's outgrown you. Right? Russia is not to be trifled with anymore. So now the empire is desperate. And the empire, so this is where we're getting to. This is where all of this gets us to. The empire is so desperate that it doesn't have any friends anymore. It doesn't have any allies anymore. It has friends and allies when it's chugging along healthy, but it's desperate and it's dying and it knows it. And now anybody around it, the U.S. empire is like a drowning man that falls in the water and he can't swim and he's grabbing for anything, grabbing to pull into anything, hold on to anything. That's why it's dangerous to try to save a person that's drowning. You really got to know what the hell you're doing. You got to come up behind them and all kinds of stuff. If you don't know what the hell you're doing, they're going to kill you. They're going to grab you because they're trying to grab anything. They're going to wrap up you. They're going to weight you down, and down you go, and you're both going to drown. And I've seen it happen more times than a few. Remember, I used to do search and rescue out on the bay for years, so I know about that kind of stuff, right? And so my point being, so now anybody close to this drowning man, which is the U.S. empire, is subject to get grabbed. Is subject to get wrapped up, and is subject to get dragged to the bottom, right? The U.S. empire is real close to Europe, isn't it? And it's hurting, and it's scared, and it's drowning, and it's grabbing Europe, and it's tightened up on Europe, and Europe's struggling trying to get away. You can't get no air, Europe. You can't get no air. So what you got is you have the European leaders now, after the last act, which I don't give a damn what they say. They know who the hell did this. They know. We all know who did this. I haven't seen the data on it yet. I have heard there are polls showing like 80-90% of the people in Germany polled say that, yeah, it was the US that did it. Well, of course, they know what time it is. Everybody does, right? So now you have a bunch of European leaders scratching their heads because they're saying, we thought we were in the good graces of the emperor. We thought we were under the protection of the emperor. Holy shit. We're being held hostage by the emperor. You see, the the European countries are no longer members of NATO. They are prisoners of NATO. Blood in, blood out. I used to teach criminal justice, and there was a thing, blood in, blood out, right? For a lot of crime families, you got to cut yourself, and you all kinds of things. Cut yourself, and sign your name in blood, things of that nature. Why is that? Blood in, blood out. The only way in is to cut it and give blood. The only way out is to die. They're gonna put a bullet in you. You're gonna give up all your blood to get out. Blood in, blood out. Well, now Europe is in a circumstance where they would really only have one option. There'd only be one option for Europe to get to in any way, shape, or form. If any particular leader in Europe were to come clean and say, look, man, we're scared of you fucking guys. You're out of your goddamn mind. You people have lost it. You are attacking us. We thought that we were members of your team. We are now victims. We are now hostages of you. And we're afraid, and you're telling us to kill all of our people, to freeze our people to death. We got problems. We need to talk. See, no individual leader could do that. But if a number of them got together, they could come together and they could hold the U.S. To account. But that's already been preempted. That's why you got compliant puppets. So that that's why the US made sure there were compliant puppets. So that if it ever came to a point where they had to say, we're wiping Europe out and we need Europe to go along with it, that they would have the people there to do it. And they do. Now, the leaders have pretty much sold their soul. They've got a Faustian deal. They told the devil long ago, you let me take power in Europe. You notice in UK, notice something about Liz Truss. Her whole everything's falling apart within weeks, right? But what does she do? She just recently said, I'm a huge Zionist. I'm a huge Israeli fan, which just goes to show how stupid she is. Israeli supporter who says I'm a huge. That's not right. That's not good grammar. There's plenty of better ways to clearly state your love and support for Israel than saying I'm a huge Zionist. I'm a huge Israel supporter. But she's a friggin' idiot. So that's the way you would expect her to talk. But people are like, why would she do that? Why did she say that? She was talking to the U.S. empire. She doesn't care what the British people think. She knows that she's in office, and as long as the U.S. empire says she stays, she stays. She knows that the House of Lords and all of the rest of them, everybody there ain't going to get her out unless Joe Biden says you could. Okay, you can get rid of her. Then they'll say yes. If as long as Joe Biden says you can't, they ain't going to do it. And she knows that. So she's not trying to snuggle up to the British people. She's not trying to snuggle up to the British Parliament. She's trying to snuggle up to the people with the power who decide whether she stays or goes. And that is the Biden administration. Now, here comes the dilemma of Liz Truss and the leaders. Now that Biden has attacked them, he has launched a brutal economic war on Europe, on Russia and Europe simultaneously. The difference is Russia's fighting back and Europe ain't. Europe is, it's like, hey, I'm coming after you with a sword. And Europe is like, well, can I sharpen your sword first, please, sir? I mean, what are you going to do? Cut my head off? Yeah, please. Certainly your sword is kind of dull if you're going to cut my head off. I want a nice clean cut. So they're sitting down sharpening the sword for the empire so the sword can shut their head off. And the Russians got enough balls to say, come on, let's dance. You want to fight? We'll fight. But you ain't taking us without a fight. And guess what? If we die, I don't know if I used to, read from a lot of things. And one of the things Malcolm X said was, when he talked about your enemies, right? And he says, look, your life is important. It's the greatest thing you got. You keep it protected. But if some people attack you and you got to go, take 4 or 5 of them with you. And that's where the Russians are. The Russians are like, look, we want to be over here. We're going to enjoy our lives. We're going to move forward, but we're going to be independent. And if you think you're going to take Russia, we're going to nuke your asses. So we're going to enjoy our lives. But if Russia falls apart, we're taking you sons of bitches with us. That's the position of Russia. And that's the position you got to have. To be independent, you got to have that position to be independent. You got to be able to say, look, I don't want any trouble. But if you want to fight, it's a fight to the death. Don't think you're going to fight me and you're going to kick my ass and you're going to walk away. Ain't neither one of us walking away. Either both of us walk away or neither one of us walk away, but you ain't walking away. And that's the position that the Russians are taking. Meanwhile, now you have the European leaders that are in a freaking jam because here they sit looking at the U.S. empire that they've done everything they were asked to do. They've been as compliant as they could be, which was their mistake because as you probably know, I don't have to tell you, you can't show weakness to people. You can't be weak. People will have no respect for you. And as we used to say in law enforcement, no good deed goes unpunished. I remember seeing people that I work with and they're trying to move up, right? They're trying to get promoted. And they would say, they would be like, I come in at 7 every morning. I work till 7 at night. And I'm like, dude, I have never seen anybody who does that get rewarded. No good deed goes unpunished. Don't do it. Work your regular hours. If you need to work overtime, work overtime. And I could give people some advice on you want to get promoted. I can tell you how to do it. But with promotion comes accountability. So before you get promoted, you better be sure that's what you want. We'd have those kinds of talks, especially when I was towards the end of my career. I had a high rank and a lot of young officers would come to me and say, hey, how do you get promoted? And I, give them my thoughts as best as I could. Right. But so now you have the leaders of Europe. They've been promoted and they're running things. Excuse me. They are accountable. See, there's nothing worse than being accountable, but not having the authority. Accountability, not authority, right? So here's what happens. Imagine you're a coach of football, soccer, whatever you guys call it, whatever, right? And so the owner hires you and they say, I want you to be, and they say, okay. And you look at and you say, that guy right there is terrible. We got to replace him. We can't win with this right half back. This freaking guy, he may be slow, but at least he can't dribble and he can't shoot. We got no business on the field. He's got to be replaced. And the owner says, oh no, he's my favorite player. Now you go out there and you lose. Why? Because they run by that guy like he's a folding chair. He's basically a folding chair on the field. They run by him, kick it right in the goal, and he looks like an idiot time and again. They take the ball from him. They just grab the back of his shorts and pull him up and give him a wedgie. They just make a complete mockery of this guy on the field and you lose. You're the coach though, and everybody at the end gets mad. You have the authority, you have the responsibility and the accountability, and everybody says, you idiot, you're losing because you got a right halfback that can't play. And what you really know is, I know that and I want to get rid of him, but the owner won't let me get another guy. I need to just cut this guy and get it. So you don't have the accountability. Excuse me. You don't have the authority to build your team, but you're getting screwed because your team loses, right? Oh, you see where I'm going? So the European leaders, as it were, are now in a position where shit's falling apart really, really bad. And it's not based on their decisions because they didn't have the authority to make decisions. It appears, even to us, that to the casual eye, the casual glance, you would look at the leaders and you say, well, Olaf Schultz, that was so stupid. He should or shouldn't have done that. Oh my God, Macron should or shouldn't have done that. Oh, that person should or shouldn't have done that, which would be accurate if Macron and these people had the decision-making power to do this or that. They don't. They did what the hell they were told. Now they're in a situation where they did what they were told and they realize that they've got an abusive empire over them, an angry beast who's saying to them, what are they going to do now? After they saw the US blow up the infrastructure of Germany. So what do you think now? You think they're like, well, we're having some real problems. And we're going to have to start getting Russian gas. Otherwise, this country's going to fall apart. Let's go to the U.S. empire. We'll call Joe Biden. Hey, Joe, we need to have a talk. No, they know now that if they do that, Joe Biden's blowing up their infrastructure. Hey, Joe, we only got one pipeline here, and it will get, if we use this pipeline, we can get some gas from Russia, and our situation will turn around a little bit, and our people will chill out. So can we do? No. They know what's going to happen. That if they call Joe and say, we got a pipeline, it's the Garland-Nixon pipeline, and the Russians have agreed they'll turn it back on and our people won't freeze and die. What do you think, Joe? He's blowing the damn pipeline up. Joe's going to say, hold on a minute, time out, just a second. Can I get right back to you? Yeah, it'll call you a couple seconds. He's going to hang the phone up. He's going to pick it up. Hello, CIA. Yeah, the Garland-Nixon pipeline. Yeah. Tomorrow, this time, I want it blown to hell. Okay, thanks a lot. Then he's going to call the guy up. Say, yeah, go do whatever you want. Hey, we're good, man. I'm good. It's all good, bro. Hey, just call the Ruskies and tell them to turn it on. All right, thanks a lot. He's going to hang it up. The next day, boom, blow it to hell. And if I know it and you know it, they know it. So they can't even call Joe Biden and confide in him for their problems because he will slap the hell out of them and say, it's your problem, brother. I may have created it, but I didn't let you get in charge for nothing. I fattened you up, and Christmas is here. Time to serve up the goose. I let you accumulate wealth. I let you accumulate power. I let you run around with your chest out, thinking like you're, acting like you're Mr. Big Tough guy or girl. But all that was going on. You had to understand that one of these days, everything may fall apart. And when that happens, you got to bite the bullet. You're the one that's going to take it. You're the one that's going to go down. And you're going to have to say to your people, it was my decisions. It's autonomy. The problem they got is it's bigger than that. The problem they got is it's far bigger than that now. They're talking about this thing like we may have a shortage of energy. That sounds technical, doesn't it? A shortage of energy. Oh, well, I thought things were going to be bad. I thought people were going to be freezing to death. I thought it was going to be something horrible. You mean all we're going to have is a shortage of energy? Well, hell, I'm going back to what I was doing. What does a shortage of energy mean? It means that your factories all close the hell down and they never open back up because they're moving to the U.S. on purpose. They're moving to Asia. Some of that stuff's going to China, Vietnam, you name it. It's out of there. It means this winter, body bags. That's what it means. What do you think is going to happen to seniors? What do you think is going to happen to people when, look, if they literally run out of energy, literally run out, a modern society in this day and age. Look, if you're living in a country where you haven't had electricity, if you're living in the Pashtun region of Afghanistan, electricity ain't all that big a deal. Some you might have it in your village, you might not. But if you don't have it, if you never had electricity in your village, in the words of Earth, Wind, and Fire, you can't miss what you never had. But if you are accustomed to getting up in the morning and looking at your cell phone, hey, Siri, what the hell's going on today? Order me breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. And Siri goes, ordering breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts? Whatever, right? That's what you're used to. Hey, it's freezing in here. Turn the heat up. They turn the heat up. You're used to that lifestyle. And now you wake up It ain't none of that. Hey, are we going to have electricity today? Well, we had 2 hours yesterday, but I don't know. Maybe we'll be down to an hour and 45 minutes today. And can you check on the TV? No, we don't have electricity. Radio's dead too. Cell phone, towers are out. We're looking at the most precipitous drop in living standards in this world. The last time living standards dropped that dramatically was Pompeo. You literally have to have a volcano erupt and wipe everybody out. So they go from a reasonable living standing to instant death. That's kind of like what we're looking at here. In some instances, it's more than just a metaphor that we're looking at people who are going from living from Paris cafes, Munich cafes, beautiful coffee shops in Amsterdam to huddled together like puppies freezing their toenails off. Water, electricity, all the things that modern society is used to. We always hear these terms about the industrialized world. Well, the industrialized world, this and the industrial, and you were like, well, I live in the industrialized world. I got no worries. Yeah, well, you're about to live in the deindustrialized world. And look, Americans to some extent are like, yeah, well, boy, those poor bastards over there in Europe. Oh, sucks to be them. You think it ain't coming here? It's just a matter of time. Because look, you got to have a market. You got to have a market. And Europe's a huge market. And that market is about to collapse. And what do you think? Meanwhile, these people here in the US are like, we've got to decouple from China. We got to stop buying things from China. We got to stop our people from China. Well, let me say this. You buy things to China, but you sell them too. So now you don't sell things to China because they're Chinese, evil Chinese people. Why? They're communists. We can't sell things to 1.4 billion people. We'd make money. Okay, we'll sell them to the EU. Oh, wait a minute. The EU, the people in the EU are wandering around in the forest for nuts and berries and firewood. So they're back in the Mesozoic era or something like that. They're like basically living in an area where sponges had just, come out or something, right? So they ain't doing so well. Trust me, the people in Europe this winter are not going to be concerned with buying a new iPhone because it won't work because there's no power to run the towers. Okay. So the leaders in Europe are caught between an angry and vicious and brutal US empire that is waging a brutal economic war on both Europe. Well, actually, they're waging an economic war on Russia that it ain't working, and a brutal military occupation and war on the people of the EU. And if you've been listening to me, when you get to the point where people's lives and their families' lives are endangered, now you're going to look at a situation where there's going to be violence, where the people there will wish to act out against their leaders, and their leaders better get the hell out of their country. Don't forget, I've been saying this for a while. Those leaders better be ready to get the hell out of those other countries when these countries start to fall. And if they don't get this shit straight and they don't get energy, these countries will fall. And I mean collapse into chaos. And when that happens, those leaders best to be out of it. They best to be in the US. They best to be hanging out in DC. That's where they best to be. Because if they're not, and these people are there, we're not going to speak of such horror of what could happen to them. But the EU leaders, they're sitting here, and on one side, there's a friggin' furious populace who is waking up to this reality. There's a populace that's saying, guys, when you told us and girls to go along with you on this Ukraine thing, we thought that you wouldn't do anything that would hurt us much less destroy everything that we appreciate as our way of life. And now we're finding out we were wrong. We're finding out that this is Jonestown and you're Jim Jones. And right now, we got a belly full of poison Kool-Aid. There ain't no way to pump our stomachs. It's the middle of winter. And our abusive military attacker, the United States, has blown the bridge. The only way we could get back to reality, and they bombed it and they blew it. Bad news. So that's where we are. All right. So let's see. That's got a lot to say here. That was fun. All right. So let's get going. And we're going to look at super chats. Before I do this, let me just say this. I want to thank everybody. You can see everything scrolling across the bottom for those who can. Patreon.com/Garland Nixon. If you can do 3, if you can do 5, if you can do 20 a month, whatever you can do to help keep the channel going. Don't forget buymeacoffee.com/Garland in and an H behind it. It's great if you don't want to do PayPal because you think it's a neoliberal globalist corporation. You can go to Buy Me a Coffee and do that. You can see that scrolling across. And most importantly, um, for those of you who can, rockfin.com, ROKFIN, rockfin.com. Thanks. I see super chats popping up. I appreciate that. Rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. In case they toss me off YouTube, please make sure you're a member on Rockfin. It's just like YouTube, only better. And I really appreciate those. Everybody smash the like button, and don't just smash the like button. Also, make sure you go to rockfin.com and become there's 2 options there. You can just become a member, and it's free, and you can see all of my shows except one. I do 1 premium show a week. It's $9.99 a month to be a premium. Yes, $9.99 instead of $10 a month, to be a premium member. And if you do that, you can see mine. Or there's lots of other good shows on Rockfin. Lots of good shows. Any of their premium stuff, you can watch anybody's premium stuff also for that $9.99 a month. So anybody that can do that on Rockfin, become a premium member. I really appreciate that. That's a tremendous help building the channel. Tomorrow morning, of course, it's Wednesday morning. So that's my 1 premium show with Scott Ritter, my good friend Scott Ritter, every month. So it's, hey, we're going to have a lot to talk to Scott Ritter about, huh? They voted in the regions, and we got to try to figure out what the hell's going to happen next, right? So we got to talk to Scott Ritter tomorrow morning, every Wednesday morning from 9 till 10 a.m. I do about the first 20 minutes on YouTube. Anybody can watch that. And then, of course, I go the last 40 minutes, 20 plus 40 is 60, right? The last 40 minutes will be done. It's just on Rockfin, and there's, of course, that's premium members only can watch that. So if you can do the $9.99 a month, fine. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just do the free Rockfin. Thanks a lot. Now it's time. Oh boy, it's time. Lots of people. So let's start hitting the super chats, and it looks like we got a bunch of them. Lander says, "Hey Garland, I just found you on the Duran. I've never heard someone say what and how you say it. I'm spending all my spare time going back to your old shows for your perspective." Hey, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it. Hey, I'm just a guy, something to say. So I appreciate that. Next, Fragile says, Yugoslavia in the 90s is a good example. Police hours, no food, no water, no electricity, and crime rate going through the roof. Good luck, Europe. Yeah, I think it's going to be worse. I think that's going to be a picnic compared to what Europe's going to be. All right, let's continue. Thanks, Garland. Fastest way for U.S. to correct trajectory from bad hegemon to good second mate. Yeah. Well, I don't think there's a fast way, because you would have to have honest and competent actors to do that. Emery Chin, hey, what's happening, Emery? U.S. induced destruction of U.S.-EU economy is a feature, not a bug. Exactly, of the proxy war against Russia. Condi Rice said as much in 2015 in an interview. Absolutely. I heard that interview. That's awesome. Way to go, Emery. I got to find that interview. Hey, look, do me a favor, Emery, if you got that interview or a link to it, email me, garlandin@gmail.com. If anybody knows that, garlandin@gmail.com. Somebody interview me a link to that, please, if you can find it, because I would like to show it to everybody and use it. That was great. Condi Rice 2015. Both Pompeo and Pompey are problematic, says Sparky. Thanks a lot, Sparky. That's brilliant. All right. Ivandro Pomadi. Hey, Garland, what do you make of the Brazil elections if Lula wins? I think Lula's going to win, and I think that Brazil's going to do what they're going to do. I think the difference in Lula is Lula will be a part of the crowd in South America. He'll be part of the group with Petro and all the different people there. So I think there'll be more unity. So I don't know. Hey, look, you know what I believe? Number one, I believe that governments that countries, I believe in independence and sovereignty. And I think that if Lula wins, I suspect that here's the truth of the matter. If it hadn't been for Operation Car Wash and the U.S. government and the criminals, he'd have won the last time. They threw him in jail. They literally cooked up a lie about Lula and locked him up. so that he couldn't run against Bolsonaro. So the fact of the matter is, if he wins, it will be justice because the people of Brazil would have chosen him last time. And the people of Brazil have the damn right to choose anybody they want. And Lula seems like a nice guy. So, hey, that's for the people of Brazil. Good luck to them. And I hope they have democracy. Evandro Pomadi, thank you very much. Wow, we got some more. Let's keep going. And then we're going to go and we're going to answer questions and all that kind of stuff over at Rock. Oh, I'm passing them over. Okay, let's go. Peter Mormon says, damn, it's so scary to realize that we literally can't not be imperial without collapsing the entire Western economy. Yeah, you know, you're right. Sparky says, Lula was pro-BRICS and pro-Russia, but the U.S. State Department backs him like another Juan Guaido. Did they get to him? I don't think so. I think that they realize they got the same problem that they have in, was it Guatemala, where what is the woman's name? Last name Castro. Where here's the bottom line: they realize there's nothing we can do. This person's going to win, and they try to like, well, we're going to befriend this person, but look, be wary when the U.S. tries to befriend you and get close. I think that's it. They realize there's nothing they can do, and so they're going to try to be on the inside out. I think they realize that just look, Brazil's a couple of things about Brazil. Fifth largest country by landmass in the world, fifth most populous country in the world, and it has more black people in it than any other country, anything outside of Africa, right? So it's an important country, and the U.S. I think they realize we can't just go head to head with these people anymore. It isn't like it used to be. All right, let's keep going. Sparky again says, didn't someone say if your vote counted, they wouldn't let you vote or something like that? Exactly. Exactly. Never truer than today. Salty Texas Trucker says, the question is, if they won't negotiate, what does the final outcome look like? How far does Russia have to go? Well, here's what I think. I think Russia realized something. We got to win it. And I think what you're going to see is over the next couple months, I think you're going to see Russia. I may be wrong. I think they're going to do a bombing campaign or something for some weeks to soften up the target. But I think you're going to see Russia try to squash them. I think you're going to see Russia try to use overwhelming force and punish Ukraine to a point where they can't keep bullshitting people into thinking that they're winning. I think they're going to try to hit them so hard, kind of like my belief, the way I was trained for self-defense. If somebody, is threatening you, if somebody is menacing you, if somebody, you don't just push them away. You hurt them so bad that they don't want any parts of this anymore. If you can, you hurt them as bad as you can, as quickly as you can. You're poking them in the eyes, you're elbowing them, you're doing all kind of terrible things to them, striking the groin, striking the throat, clapping the ears, everything you can, right? You want to deliver so much punishment and so much pain so fast that they're like, whoa, I don't want any parts of this. That's the way you would react to a threat, right? I think that's kind of what you're looking at with Russia. I think they realize what we know. There ain't gonna be no negotiation. So I think they realize we got to. They feel like we got to kill a gnat with a sledgehammer now, and then they've got to create that dynamic. I think Russia has to, or maybe feel as though they've got to look. We got to bring this thing to a head. I think Russia feels as though they have to create the dynamic. They have to put the U.S. empire in the position where they got to make a decision. They got to say, okay, we're not going to drag this thing on. You ain't going to be sending the HIMARS and SMIMARS and FLYMARS every 3 weeks. There ain't going to be nothing to send it to. We're going to smash these people from the air and whatever the case may be. And then you can decide, how do you want to deal with it now? Because there ain't much of them left. Are you going to send in troops? What are you going to do? And timing is everything, because I think Russia may move slow. Russia may go to the UN and say, look, we demand that they move. They may send them a demand. They may do why? To mark some time, to kill a little bit of time, to continue to build their forces. So Russia, it wouldn't shock me if I was in charge and I was Russia and my forces weren't completely ready. I do some things to kill a little bit of time. And at the same time, I'm going to rock my adversary to sleep. Right? I'm going to start killing time. I'm going to go to the UN. I'm going to file requests. I'm going to go to Security Council. I'm going to say, you better do this or else, blah, 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 while I'm continuing. You ever heard this? Diplomacy is the art of saying nice doggy until you can find a rock. I'm building my forces. I'm building everything. And I'm just bullshitting. When you think that I'm really trying to go through the UN security, I'm just buying a little bit of time. Why? I want 2 things to happen. I want my forces to be built up completely so I can hammer you, number 1. Number 2, I want the winner to come so the winner can hammer you. So at the same time, I'm putting you in a position where you have to make a decision. you're going to be hurting so bad. So in the same way that I said, the leaders of Europe, on one side, they got the devil, the other side, the deep blue sea, right? On one side, they got their people saying, we're hungry, we're starving, you better do something or we're going to come in for you. On the other side, you've got the US empire, the Biden team saying, you better listen to us or we'll blow up your infrastructure, we'll attack you, we'll do everything terrible to you, right? Okay, so the Russians want to create that same dynamic. And what they want to create a dynamic that says, we're crushing Ukraine. You got to make a decision. Do you think you're going to come help them? Because we're going to fight you if you do. Meanwhile, on the other side of you, there's winter, and winter's crushing you. And your economic situation is crushing you, and you are being crushed. So you're between me, if I'm Russia, of course, me in Ukraine, slapping Ukraine to the ground, and you got to figure out, are you going to let them just flopple around and die, or are you going to try to come save them? Or are you in a position, if I'm Russian, then I say, well, we can talk if you want. I mean, they ain't doing so well, and neither are you. We'll give you an out. Would you like some gas? Would you like some energy? We can work some deals now. You're going to have to recognize the Donbass. You're going to have to recognize Crimea, and we'll give you a 10-year 10% discount on gas. So you're going to win on your gas. You're going to win. You're going to get gas and fuel at a 10% discount. We're going to win. You're going to recognize it. And our security guarantee on our border. So you're in a situation where you got to do something to deal with the cold. And Ukraine has come to a head. Your economy has come to a head. Your cold weather has come to a head. Ukraine has come to a head. So I want to force all of that at the same time in the middle of winter if I'm Russia. That's the way I would do things if I were running Russia. I would put you in a bind in a number of different ways at the same time. So you didn't only have to deal with the fact that I just crushed the Ukrainian army. You also at home have to deal with people who are enraged. At the same time, it's cold as hell and you're freezing. So what are you going to do? So that's, I think, other than that, I mean, you don't want it to be the middle of the summer and everything's jolly for these people. And then you crush Ukraine if you're Russia. And so they got a nice, easy decision to make. It ain't easy, don't get me wrong, but they got a decision to make. You want their decision to be hell, to be misery. And you want them to say to the U.S., my country's coming unglued. We got to do something. And that's something better include some energy getting in here from the Russians. I don't give a shit if they keep Donbass and Crimea. We're losing people, thousands of people to death and our hospitals don't even have electricity anymore. We got to move. So, okay. So I'll say all that to continue. Thanks a lot, Brian Berner. Let me keep going. David Crow, thank you. And I think that's it. So let me go to the bottom, see if there's any new super chats that I might have missed, and then we go right over. Cryosynth says positive comments on Lula from the State Department is just another tactic, guilt by association. Exactly. Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, we love them. We love them. And then the people start saying, well, you love them. I don't trust them. All right. So now we're going. Oh, we got some people over right on. So, okay. So Copeland on Rockfin says, to faith and manifest destiny runs deep. Faith and manifest destiny runs deep in Blinken. You are correct. How about this? Mariah M says, hi, Garland. I canceled my YouTube membership last weekend. I'm trying to starve the YouTube beast. I suggest everyone who loves freedom of speech starts to tip on an alternative platforms like Rockfin, Rumble, and Locals. I fear that we will all be subjected to ever more censorship soon. Of course, as we have to be. As they get backed into a corner, look what they're doing. If these bastards will blow up their own allies, you think they will throw us off YouTube? JVB says, thanks a lot for a tip. Chad Martell, thanks a lot. There's a tip. AJ94112, thanks a lot. There's a tip. JVB, no good deed goes unrewarded, or as we said, unpunished. Mariah M says, also, I wonder if you heard about this theory I read on Telegram about Nord Stream. U.S. government intelligence, of course, but they use Polish special forces with aid from Sweden and Denmark. Well, I don't know. Here's the bottom line. What difference does it make? They're all puppets. They're all puppets, so it doesn't make any difference. They're all puppets. So the puppet master used a couple of puppets. And Nathaniel Mercier says, check your email. I sent you the Condoleezza Rice video on Nord Stream video. Oh, thanks a lot. Certainly appreciate that. I will check my email. Anything else? Wow, this has been a long one. I think that's it. Well, thank you, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. It is time for Garland Nixon to throw in the towel. Peace. I'm out.